Welcome to the Bend Like Bamboo Resilience Podcast, where we discover how life's greatest challenges can become our greatest strengths. I'm your host, Amanda Campbell, kinesiologist, MS specialist, resilience coach, and author. Get ready to be inspired by these remarkable humans who share their raw, real stories of transformation, the breakthrough moments, the lessons learned in the trenches, and the practical wisdom that turned their greatest challenges into their greatest strengths. These conversations offer hope, tools, and proof that resilience isn't just possible, it's your birthright. Together, let's discover how flexibility can become your superpower, turning life's storms into stepping stones towards the person you're meant to become. Let's dive straight into our next conversation. Hello, Jimmy Burroughes. Welcome to the Bend Like Bamboo podcast.
Thanks so much. Really good to be here, Amanda. Appreciate the invite.
Oh, my pleasure. So, you are a high performance leader and coach. You specialize in helping managers reclaim 6+ hours per week to lead more strategically. So interesting that you are an ex-British Army officer. You used to work in the corporate world as a general manager, and your methodology is called Simplify to Amplify. You're two times author, you're a podcast host, and essentially you've trained 3,000 plus leaders across 20 countries. Oh, wow. I'm so excited to speak to you today.
Thank you so much. I hate it when people read those things out because it makes me feel really arrogant, but it's not at all. It's all done with love, so I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate your humbleness. It's actually pretty incredible, your background and what you've achieved, though. What got you into it? Tell me, take me back to the start.
The start. So start of the professional career was actually Gulf War Two. So I finished university. I did a degree in tropical medicine, and I didn't really know where that was going to take me because at that time, medicinal jobs, you could become a doctor, great, but tropical medicine is more about sort of parasites and vectors and infections and immune responses. Fascinating that we've both gone into that space over our lives. Um, but I kind of was seeking some sort of professional direction, and the military called. I'd been an army cadet, and I really enjoyed doing what in the UK is called OTC, which is Officer Training Corps at university. So ended up joining the military, thinking, well, this would be a great way to see the world, do lots of adventure training,
Yes.
have lots of dinner nights, make lots of friends, and there was nothing really going on in the world when I joined up. And by the end of my training, we were in the midst of the Second Gulf War. So my first gig was headed overseas to Iraq. Well, actually, into Kuwait and then hitchhiking into Iraq. That's another story. And leading soldiers in various forms of essentially kind of supermarket on demand or collect your shopping in the middle of the desert. Imagine kind of drive through shopping at the supermarket, but for military things versus fruit and veg.
Yeah.
That's what I did for the first few years of my career, which was
Wow.
fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was how I kind of ended up in the military, and I absolutely loved it. 6 amazing years of my life doing incredible things, very busy, very stressful. Learned a lot about myself, learned an awful lot about leadership,
Yeah.
and it kind of set me up for the rest of my career.
Oh, that's amazing. What do you think the core lesson was that you learned about yourself?
About myself, I think it's one of the lessons we teach nearly every program that we do. And it's the belief that many leaders hold that they need to be the expert in everything. And they need to have all the answers. They need to solve all the problems. They need to be the one who is the center of all the information. And it works when you're an individual contributor, and it kind of works when you're a manager. But when you move into managing managers and leadership roles, it doesn't work anymore. And actually, it's one of the quickest routes to burnout is you being at the center of everything. It also doesn't allow you to create teams around you. And I really remember this when I was a young lieutenant in Iraq, and I was trying to be the perfect officer, super fit and knew everything and had all the answers and awake longer than all the boys. And I remember my first staff sergeant, an amazing guy called Darbs, took me aside and he said, "Sir, with all due respect, your job is to make the decisions. Our job is to give you the information." And it really kind of cut through this
Mhm.
belief that I had that I had to know everything. And these soldiers have got much more experience doing these jobs than I had. Darbs had 15 years experience. The third in line in the platoon had 12 years experience.
Yeah.
So these are really experienced guys and girls who
Yeah.
live and breathe this operation on a day-to-day basis. And
Yeah.
then I'm putting all this pressure on myself to know all the answers and to know everything. And it was a real wake-up call. And it's something that, say, we still teach today,
Yeah.
that you don't your job as a leader is to make decisions. And what you need to do is pull those people in around you who have expertise and ask them what they think and riff with them to create ideas and test your decision making with them. And when you're inexperienced, that testing is probably more rigorous. When you become a little bit more experienced, your decisions are probably based on a bit more experience yourself.
Yes.
But I think I learned, early in my career that there's so much information out there that I don't need to have. I just need to get it from other people, and then that helps inform my decision making in a
That
more
helps.
collaborative aspect.
That is so inspiring and absolutely accurate. I think so many founders and CEOs right now, and I know with teams that I've led where if a business that I've founded, it was my mindset around, well, if you're the founder and you've become the expert and so you've created this business, you can fall into that trap of thinking that then all that information needs to come from you. But it's such a intelligent and intuitive shift when you can realize exactly what you said, that actually you're leading and you're making the decisions of the pathway forward of your vision, but you can leverage experts that know so much more than you in all the different multi layers of aspects that makes up a business. That's golden what you just said.
Mm. Thank you. And it comes with lots of positive byproducts.
Mm,
Um, if I think back to, I'll give you an example. When we were in the desert, one of the things we had to do was set up these drive-through supermarkets. And if I was the arrogant young officer that I guess I started off as, which is I have to know everything and I'm the one with all the answers, I would say, let's put it here. This is how we're going to do it. And there would be mistakes in there. I would maybe have
yeah,
miscalculated the fuel. I would not pay attention to the capabilities of some of the vehicles. I wouldn't be aware of the rest profiles of some of the guys, because the things you don't know. You don't know what you don't know when you're inexperienced and you're learning to be a leader. And
yes,
so the way I used to do this was I would say, hey, this is the brief. This is what we've got to achieve. Um, what do we think would be some good options? And my staff sergeant would sort of sit down with me and say, well, this would be a good location because of these reasons. So I'd be learning and growing. Um, so they'd be feeling like their voice was heard. They'd be feeling like they were contributing. They'd also be building my capability. They'd also be building their capability because I'd be challenging them with new things and new locations and new problems to solve. So they'd be learning and growing as well. Then we bring in all the corporals, who is kind of the next tier down in the platoon, and we'd say, okay, so this is what we're thinking. Does anybody see any holes here? So we were asking those guys to do critical thinking. They were, what are the dramas? What are the problems? Has this route been used too much? They were out on the ground all the time doing the work.
yeah,
So they would have this first-hand experience. That hole's been that road had a mine on it last week. There's potholes there. That route's not out, is out of order at the moment. So we get a more context. And again, we're asking them to think critically, problem solve, challenge themselves. But all of those things were building trust in me because I would be listening and adapting the plan whilst they were giving me these inputs. And then they say, okay, oh, cool. Based on what I've heard, this is what I think we should do. Are we okay with that? Great. Let's go brief the boys. And then we go off and do our briefing. But everybody who'd been involved in that planning process was bought into the planning process. So
yeah,
I didn't have to convince anybody of anything because we'd all decided that was the best way forward collaboratively. That builds trust. That means that, there's so many people I talk to that they say, oh, there's no point in me doing a good job because my boss is just going to rewrite it, or my boss is just going to, correct it all anyway. So I just won't bother. There's no point.
yeah,
Whereas if your boss saying, hey, let's get together and do this together. Let's get together and write it together. Let's create this together. Let's brainstorm around a whiteboard. So you've got, we're aligned on the thinking for this plan or this strategy or this initiative.
yeah.
What think of the change that has on the people around you. And that's probably just,
Yes.
it's just knock-on effect from just going, what do you think? You know?
Yes, yeah, a huge, and you're leveraging not only their expertise, but it's more fulfilling in their roles, and they're feeling more useful and productive, and like yeah, using their expertise, but allowing them to, the team to get more involved. It's more purposeful.
Yeah, absolutely. And just
Yeah,
creates these ripple effects of positivity, better trust, better engagement, better
yeah,
discretionary effort,
yeah,
higher productivity, better critical thinking, all these parameters that you want in,
yeah,
um, all these things that you want in your team that we subconsciously or ignorantly suppress because we feel like we have to have all the answers.
yeah, yeah. I love that. It's so key. Um, well, this is a resilience podcast, so I want to ask you about resilience next. And
Mm.
as someone who's served in the military and led in Fortune 500 environments, what does true resilience mean to you, and how is it different from just pushing through?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic, and it's one of the reasons I was thrilled to be able to come on the podcast. When we talk about resilience, I always tell a story. Um, I'm in New Zealand right now, and I lived in New Zealand for just over a decade. And out the front of the house where I stayed, there was this enormous oak tree, and this oak tree was probably a couple of 100 years old, and was really thick and strong and robust. And in New Zealand, we're getting increasing numbers of tropical storms that are coming through. And over the years, this tree has weathered those storms. As the storms come through, it kind of sways a little bit and creaks a little bit, but it's always got through. And then suddenly, a couple of years ago, we had a big storm come through. And whether it was the strength of that storm or whether it was the combination of multiple storms back to back, but that tree cracked and fell over.
Mm,
And it was unfortunate because it was a beautiful tree.
mm,
And around the same time, I moved to live in Mexico. And in Mexico, there's loads of palm trees. And we get hurricanes all the time. We get, well, I think we're on the 13th hurricane of the season coming through where I am in Mexico. And those palm trees bend in the wind. So when the storm comes through, they bend. They might lose some leaves, but they come back and they
mm,
keep going. And
mm.
those palm trees are probably going to be, 50, 60 years old, some of them. They're really impressive, large palm trees, but they're flexible.
Yeah,
And the reason I tell that story is because I think it's a really great analogy for resilience.
yeah.
People think resilience is like being like the oak tree, and you
Strong.
have to be strong and firm and robust,
Yeah,
and anything that's thrown at you, you have to just take it.
yeah,
But they don't realize that each one of those just taking it is going to just make a little crack or just weaken you a little bit, and then something will come along that you can't deal with and it will break you.
mm,
And to me, resilience is far more about being like the palm tree. It's bending when there's pressure. It's going with the flow of the extreme energy that's coming at you or the extreme difficulty, and not trying to fight it, but rolling with it. If I use a surfing analogy, it's surfing the wave rather than drowning in it.
yeah,
But it's allowing yourself. You might lose some hair along the way, as most of us tend to do as we age,
mm,
um, and the stress goes up. But you will come back if you bend with the with you bend with if you bend with the force, and that's real resilience. It's, for me, the definition of resilience is the ability to work under extreme conditions and bounce back to full effectiveness really
yes.
quickly.
Well,
Um,
yes, yeah. I'm going to totally agree with you because the my business is called Bend Like Bamboo.
exactly. I
And
should have said bamboo rather than palm tree, shouldn't I?
yeah, no,
You'd
but
have
it's
been
a good
that.
analogy because there's other trees that bend as well, bending in direct proportion to the wind without breaking and without snapping. And flexibility builds resilience, and that's what I believe too. And I learned that with when I was very sick, and I've got multiple sclerosis, and prior to my diagnosis, I realized now that I was more rigid. I was stressed, and because of my stress levels and not knowing how to manage that, often from thoughts and beliefs that I hadn't reimagined from the past. And sometimes we have, some stress in childhood, so common. But if we
Mhm.
aren't flexible and we don't know what to put in the bin, what to let go of, and then how to move forward and what we're constantly evolving as human beings and as leaders and as businesses. And it's a forever, everyday process of what we're letting go of and how we're moving forward. And I believe that flexibility is about reimagining the stories that we tell ourselves that might lead to that more egoic reaction where we feel like all the information needs to come from us as a leader versus being flexible and going, hang on, if I see this from a bird's eye perspective, I've got so many amazing specialists around me. And working together, we're going to be more powerful. And that's from flexible thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's I just love the way you articulated that, and the idea that so many of us, I'm guilty of it as well when I was a GM, that when the pressure goes up, we lean in harder. And you kind of put your shoulder into it, don't you? You start pushing harder, and we end up in this position where the analogies that just plentiful, but we're sprinting on the hamster wheel, or we're just playing whack-a-mole with blinkers on. We don't see anything else that's going on around
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
And the resilience that you're demonstrating there is oak tree resilience. It's inflexibility. It's when they push, I'll push back, as
mm,
opposed to saying, well, they're pushing for a reason. What's going on here?
yeah,
How do I flow with this? And my wife is, she's far more spiritual and Eastern philosophy than I am, but she's taught me over the years that whatever happens will be the best for
mm,
you and us. And
mm,
so if something is really causing resistance and causing you to lean in, actually it's worth saying, well, do I step back and let this flow past me? And that gives me clear road ahead to do something else.
yeah,
Or do I bend with this
yeah,
because I don't need to fight it, and I
yeah.
can put my fight into something else that is worth the fighting for.
Yeah, no, we so much energy focused and fighting and resisting what just needs to be left alone.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so then if you're all about helping leaders through organizational friction, how do you do that with the power of flexibility?
One of the things that really comes up is this kind of whack-a-mole hamster wheel mentality, that the faster you work and the harder you go, the faster you work and the harder you go. And it's just like this never-ending cycle. People get themselves into this burnout, um, the plug hole of burnout, where they just can't recover. And so one of the big friction points that we try and tackle is mental headspace. It's one of the first things we look at. That just saying, where where is all your time and energy going, and how do we pull you back from being involved in everything? Reduce the number of meetings you're in, reduce the number of decisions you're having to take, start delegating things away from you so you've got a bit more time to think. And one of the core activities that does that is we say, everybody take 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes with a notebook, no pen, no laptop. Sorry, no phone, no laptop.
Yeah.
Just take a notebook and pen, go somewhere away from your people and your office and your work environment. So cafe, forest, park, wherever you can get some just headspace, and just write down what's the most important thing for you to be working on today and tomorrow, and what's the most important thing to work on next week.
Yeah.
And once you've got that, focus
Yeah.
your energy on that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a story about this. We had a leadership program. We were working with a very large American business, and we were working on their executive transition program. So this is people who were moving from kind of senior manager into GM or roles. And each of these people had, a couple of thousand plus people reporting into them. So they're pretty sizable leaders already. And we challenged them with this idea: go and take 15 to 20 minutes with a notebook. And as you can imagine, these are pretty busy people. They're getting a couple of thousand emails a day. They're working on multiple problems. And we got kind of three responses. The first response was, I'm really busy. I don't have time to do that. 15 to 20 minutes is critical in my day. I don't have time. The second group said, I'll try when I can. And the third group said, okay, well, I'm here to learn. I'll do that. Fast forward 12 months, and at the end of the program, we mapped where people sat in terms of their performance and potential across the
Mm,
business. So how had they performed over the course of the year? Did they have potential to go even further in the business? And there's no surprises here. The group that had said it's never going to happen, we're too busy, many of them hadn't survived the program. They hadn't got through. They'd either burned out or left the business, or been moved into other roles.
right.
The group that said, we'll try, they'd gone one of two ways. They'd either gone to group A, which is we're too busy, we can't do it, or they graduated to Group C. And Group C um, were our best performers, were our highest potential, inconclusively. That sorry, what's the word? Undoubtedly, they were the best performers on the program, and they had the most headspace, and they had the most potential because they'd taken this time out to reflect. And it was this flexibility in their approach to say, what I've been doing up until now
Mm.
has got me to here. But to do the next job, to do
Mm.
this next job well, I've got to start thinking a little bit differently. I've got to be a little bit more flexible in my toolkit and my mindset. And so 15 to 20 minutes is what I'm going to do. And it was those 15 to 20 minutes that they said was the single biggest differentiator across the 12 months out of everything they learned in the program.
Yes.
And the reason I tell that story is because when you move into a leadership role, the tool set and the mindset that you bring are great for management,
Yeah.
but they might not be great for leadership. And so you've got to be flexible in the working harder and longer doesn't work anymore. There's
Yeah.
new things to try. And the resilience that you can develop just by taking 15 minutes out with a notebook is
Yeah.
phenomenal and
Yeah.
will pay dividends
Yeah.
99.9% of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, any of my clients that I am working with that are sort of stuck on that wheel of just go, 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 work harder, 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 and they just always feel like they don't have any time. It is a stress survival response that's going on within them, a sense of safety. Even me myself, I've been through chapters of my career where I've gotten stuck there because it has felt like life or death, how much I had to get done in that day to get my business from here to here.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so it's and that's why I love kinesiology, which is a tool that I use that can get into the subconscious brain. It's very similar to acupuncture. We use the same meridians, but we view the body holistically, so structurally, biochemically, emotionally, and energetically. And we can get into that stress response and defrag it by shifting, holding points, but really getting into, well, why? Why is it so life and death for you to keep going and pushing harder and like filling your diary? And unless you get to the cause of that, you can't pull back and take that space, which is why I really make sure that, you know, just the basics of meditation, journaling, exercising, eating really well, they're my pillars of health. That is what's going to help you to create that flexible mindset, because it's self-love, isn't it? We're talking about
Yeah.
self-love. We're talking about our ability to be kinder and compassionate to ourselves as opposed to being hard on ourselves. And I'm an Aries and a type A personality. I'm so hard on myself. And so I have to
Yeah.
consciously go out of my way to go, hang on. And I do that too. What are the top three things that I have to do today? And I'll do
Yeah.
them. And the rest is noise. The rest
Mhm.
is noise, and being able to address what is noise and what is not. Um, I heard on a podcast the other day is how Steve Jobs, you know, achieved what he did at Apple. Is he had was very good at understanding the signal and tapping into
Mhm.
those three things every day versus what the noise was.
Agree. And that really is one of the biggest differentiators for effective leaders versus non-effective leaders, or
Yeah,
amazing leaders versus good leaders, is they know where to put their time and energy to get maximum impact. We
absolutely.
have five key high performance differentiators, and value and impact are two of them, because that ability to say, I've got 300 fires to put out today,
Yeah,
but I'm going to work on the three that are going to make the biggest difference to the bigger picture and the long term.
yeah,
That is just a core skill you need to work on, and that's one of the things we kind of focus our people on. Something else you said, and I'd love to go back if we may,
yeah, yeah,
was the idea of rest. And we call it downtime in my book, but essentially it's that idea of switching off a little bit. And
yeah,
it's probably worth talking about that in terms of resilience as well, because you bring up this great point that we are go 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 all the time. And you'll probably know this as well. In our brains, we have two separate networks. I like to say sort of two different TV channels, and you can only watch one TV channel at any one time. So when one turns on, the other one turns off. And those
mm,
two TV channels are our task processing network and our default mode network. In simple terms, it's kind of our executive function versus our daydreaming function. And so when we're in executive function, daydreaming's off. When we're in daydreaming, executive is off. And too many of us don't access our daydreaming function because we're, even when we're not working, we're still checking text, doing emails, watching TV on an iPad, multi-screening, and
Yeah.
it's though we miss those core moments that happen when you're meditating, reflecting, journaling, when you're washing the dishes, when you're having a
Being
shower, when you're walking the
creative.
dog,
Yeah.
being creative. Um, and that daydreaming function has this incredible effect. And when the daydreaming function TV channel is on, it's like the janitorial staff go into the executive function part of your brain and start doing some cleaning. They clean up the
Yeah.
mess, they file everything away,
Yeah.
they organize everything. So when you come back to work the next morning, the office is tidy. Things have been sorted out for you. But if you're constantly go, 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 you're working till 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, you're not sleeping, you're using substances, whether that's alcohol, drugs, tranquilizers, sleeping pills to help you get through, you're using stimulants in the morning, that janitorial stuff never gets activated. And so
Mm.
you're constantly coming in the morning to a filthy, dirty office with stuff everywhere, disorganized and disarray. And then you're expected to perform and function.
Yeah.
So this the ability to be resilient and to have to be a high performer requires you to consciously activate your daydreaming TV channel on occasion and every day ideally. And there's heaps of research we could go into about this, but essentially what we see is that you can get a sort of 15 to 20% performance improvement just by going home at 5 o'clock every day and not working anymore. You can have massive improvements in the way you adapt your hobbies and your time off to be what we call creatively versus consumptively
Yeah.
downtiming.
Yeah.
And you talked about this before. I just think I think it's an important point to bring out because there are so many
Yeah.
people that just go, 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 and they think they're highly productive, but actually they're unproductive because they're coming back to work and the janitorial stuff haven't been in to clear up.
Yeah. No, I love how you explain that and the science behind it. I actually I knew that, but I didn't know it on that level. And yeah, that's incredible. I'm glad you shared that.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Well, for my chronically stressed, the people out there that are listening that might have an autoimmune condition or they're recovering from burnout, you've explained, some tips on, three core things that you should do every day to be productive. But I'm also interested in the common friction points that people may not realize that might be draining their energy.
Mm. Um, let's go back to those five differentiators again. And one of the core, um, well, in fact, we use two of them. The first one is purpose. Um, this is such an interesting concept because if I was to ask you, why were you put on this planet? What difference are you here to make? Most people, more than 80% of people in our workshops, struggle to answer that question really clearly. They don't know why they're here. They just kind of drifted into this job because it was the promotion or pay rise from the previous job, and
Yeah.
they don't really know what difference they're here to make apart from maybe helping people. Everybody's kind of got something about helping people. Um, so when you have a lack of purpose in your personal life, in your individual, in your sense of soul and core,
Yeah.
it's kind of like being a boat without a rudder or a sail. You're just a victim of the tides and the winds. And so where the force takes you is where you go. And that causes you to end up in all sorts of trouble and places that you necessarily didn't want to be.
True.
So having a lack of purpose is key. And the first chapter of my book's all about purpose, but we try and line up this almost like drawing a thread or pulling a needle and thread through individual purpose, then translating that into the purpose of my role. So what's my role here to do? And absolute clarity and granularity on what my role is here for, the things I'm meant to be delivering, what I've got authority to decide on and not decide on, what latitude I've got to make decisions, what education, experience, and exposure I'm going to get from the people around me to help me develop and grow in this role, and who I go to for support. And
Mm.
we teach a framework that allows people to achieve this purpose in their role and to give purpose to those around them. And what we find is that boosts trust, alignment, clarity, and a whole lot of other things. Then we try and translate that into purpose of team. So why is this team here? And what we see is we start to shift from individual purpose and role purpose. Purpose is all about identity,
Yeah.
and team purpose and subsequently organizational purpose is all about impact. So people identify with who they are and what they are and what they do. You know, perfect example, when you go meet somebody new, you ask what they do because people's identity is based on what they do
I
and
know. It's
and
how I
how they
started
help people.
podcasts, yeah, with you.
Right?
The first
Exactly.
thing I said, oh, you are a high performance leader and coach.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean, and I'm so many more things than that. I'm a dad and I'm a scuba diver and I'm a wine lover and all those other things. But we
yeah.
start with people, everybody starts with their job.
Mm,
Um, and then this impact thing is we like to feel like we're making a difference in the world.
mm,
So, and the reason a bit of a roundabout answer to your question, but the reason I go into that purpose thing
mm.
is what we know is that we are basically giant electromagnets. There's electrical signals all over us, and if you could look at us with a different type of lens, we'd be like a giant radio antenna beaming RF energy that we just can't see right now. But we've got infrared energy, we've got electrical energy, we've got radio frequencies, we've got all these things inside us. And when you have purpose, it's like tuning the radio and focusing the beam to the thing that you're working on.
Yeah,
And what we see is when people are tuned, they're clear on what they should be doing, they're clear on their purpose, they're clear on their goals, they're clear on their objectives, and they're clear on the thing they're working towards that's making a big difference.
yeah,
We see all of the stress hormones drop.
yeah,
See all of the neurochemicals that cause stress and depression and anxiety drop. We
yeah,
see burnout levels drop, and people with autoimmune conditions. I'm not saying this is like a magic bullet cure, but we see a reduction in the symptoms of. A reduction in the causes of some of the symptoms of autoimmune diseases. We see blood markers change. We see
yeah,
kidney conditions change. We see hormonal levels shift. And it's just from, like, say, tuning and focusing the radio waves that are inside our body by getting clear on purpose.
yeah, yeah. 100% agree with you. And I love the Yeah, because the way I work with my clients is helping them to identify the inner conflict that's causing that stress response. But what you've just said is so positive. It's also about aligning with your purpose and and knowing what your purpose is a journey within itself. It also requires self-belief and confidence to be able to believe that you're worthy of working in a role and finding something that is of purpose. But when you do find it, and I'm so grateful that I did, 15 years ago when I studied kinesiology. And, that's essentially, you just described kinesiology, the electromagnetics of that you can't really see in the body. Well, kinesiology is a tool that helps you to tap into that,
Yep.
from the top of your head to through all your organs and fascia and all structural and biochemical and emotional aspects of the body. Back in the day, they used to, in caveman days, to release trauma, beating the chest and chanting. So we release trauma in the body, but we also hold wisdom in the body as well.
Hmm.
Kinesiology helps to open the chakras and to get all the information of, oh, in my solar plexus, I'm really working through some life lessons here of self-identity, trust, confidence, joy, your ability to hold that space. So
Yeah.
yeah, finding purpose, um, and integrating that into your role. Absolutely, it feels amazing, but of course, I can see how there's science behind how it reduces burnout and the stress response. That's
Yeah.
golden.
And it obviously has a commercial impact as well, which is what makes it worthwhile doing in terms of
Yeah.
my profession. But, I think it's one of the things I've discovered I've moved through these stages of my career is this connection between energy and performance.
Yes.
and and I mean kind of the electromagnetic energy that's inside us, the light that's inside us all, and how that can be channeled and tuned and focused to create incredible commercial performance outcomes.
Yeah.
And I used to be a scientist and very literal, and now I've become a bit more woo and energy focused, and there's a really powerful combination of being able to navigate those two different worlds and leverage each for the benefit of the other.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you've got a book, Escape the Multitasking Trap, and it
Mm,
challenges how we think about productivity. And so for someone managing autoimmune symptoms or chronic stress where everything typically feels urgent, what's your advice about prioritization?
Yeah, this is such a great question. Probably, I mean, the simple and flippant answer would be just stop multitasking, because it doesn't help you or others.
Yeah.
But if I go into that in a bit more detail, the book was written, it's a very short book. It's only kind of 45 pages long. And it was written off the back of a piece of work I did with a CEO of an organization. And he was Mr. Multitasking. And he thought he was great at it. And he thought it was really helpful to get lots of things done. And what we tend to see, as you move up the leadership ladder is that you are challenged by three different types of switching. Um, the first one that we see is what we call altitude switching. So this is the move between being strategic, sitting around the leadership table, doing strategy for the 3 years ahead and planning with the board,
Mm.
to being in a one-to-one with a member of your team, talking about the fact they were late for work, and then going into a regional planning meeting, and then coming back because somebody is feeling a bit sick, and then going into brief the board on the new funding model, and then coming back to do a one-on-one with a member of your team. And it's
Yeah.
this altitude switching is exhausting. So we've identified that as a source of stress. And essentially what happens when you're moving
Mm.
strategic operational, strategic tactical,
Yeah.
um, is as a cognitive cost. And we certainly see that you burn more sugar in your brain, so therefore there's more byproducts. But there's also neurochemical and biological markers in blood and lymph that we see that are triggered from this constant stress of switching. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Um, the second one that we see is what you would probably think of as traditionally as task switching. So this is, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm spinning lots of plates and juggling lots of balls at the same time. And what happens when we do that is we're not actually doing that at all. When you were younger, I'm probably going to show our age here to the listeners, but when I was younger, I used to have one of those double decker tape machines.
Oh, yes.
um, and you could, press. And so what I would do is I make my own mixtapes, and I thought I was being really cool DJ. But essentially, what you do is you press record on one, and you press play on the other one, and then at some point you've got to quickly press stop, take the tape out, turn it around, put it back in, press play again, and to keep the mix going.
Yeah.
And this is essentially what multitasking is for most people: is pressing stop, taking the cassette out, putting another cassette in,
Yeah.
closing the
Yeah.
door, pressing play, and you do that hundreds and hundreds of times a day, and every single one of those has a cognitive cost. It's slower. And the very simple example I could give you this is, can you count back from 26 to 20, for me?
26, 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20.
Okay. Can you now say the letters A to F in order?
A, B, C, D, E, F.
Okay. Now can you count back from 26
Yep.
and intersperse those with saying A, B, C, D, E, F going forwards?
26 A, 25 B, 24 C. I'm finding it difficult.
Right. Okay. So two very simple
My
tasks
brain
that you
just
did
went.
like that. When you did what we call batching,
That's a good
it was
example.
really easy, right? You just
Yeah.
went. "Duh, buh, 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 buh." But when you had to do the cassette switching,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a very hard task, but you
Yeah.
were like, okay, stop, think, act, stop, think, act,
Well, there was
and
extra energy used to go, oh, yeah, I've
massive
got it.
amounts of extra
Yeah.
energy.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, that's a
and
great
and this is what we're
point.
doing all day, right? So, and again, the biomarkers are there to see that there's
Yeah.
a massive cognitive strain, and you combine that with being constantly in the executive TV channel and not in the daydreaming channel,
Yeah.
and you can
Yeah.
see the
Yeah.
consequences.
Yeah.
The third challenge that we see in switching is what we call functional switching, which is moving between being a member of a leadership team and running a team. And where do I put my energy? And your priorities are different. The requirements on you are different. The character you play is different. One, you're a team member. One, you're a leader. And so this again creates strain. Now, the reason I talk about these three different switches is when we see people who are multitasking, often they're doing all of those at the same time, and each of them has a cognitive consequence, a biological consequence, a neurochemical consequence, and most importantly, a performance consequence, whether it's the performance of the way your body works or the results that you're creating commercially. And so the reason I wrote the book, and the book was written quite early in this research, so it's more about Michael's story and how he stopped doing this. Um, but what he noticed when he stopped multitasking, when he
Mm.
stopped switching all the time and started batching more. So he'd have a day on his team, he'd have a day with the leadership team, he would do
Yeah.
tasks in batches. Um, is it created more energy for him, more clarity for him, but also created more clarity for the team because he wasn't dipping in and dipping out of things. He'd actually say, well, let's have a focused day on this and
Yeah.
solve that one thing. So
Yeah.
people became clear on, well, what's the priority for today. Today is a workshop or a session or a meeting on just this one thing to get it finished.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
we finished it, we'll move on.
Yeah.
And it sounds easy to say, and there's probably lots of people listening thinking, well, that's easy to say, but how am I going to actually do that? Because the reality of my life is that it's chaos all the time.
Yeah.
But unless you start doing something, nothing will change. And so
Absolutely.
what we teach is the 1% rule. You know,
Yeah.
where can you find a 1% shift in the way you're managing your multitasking and just shift it? And then
Yeah.
tomorrow find another 1%. And then tomorrow find another 1%. And
Yeah.
over time, you'll see this massive shift in the way you operate.
Yeah.
But it feels very hard to say, I'm not going to multitask anymore because other people are in charge of my diary or other people put meetings in my diary and I've got the other things that I'm responsible for and I've got a family and I've got other things I've got to be involved in. So start small. And this is the thing when you're in burnout, you're in cognitive overload, when you're in recovery, is start small. Look and think with your diary, with your journal for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
What's the smallest thing I can do that will have the biggest impact?
Yeah.
The most important thing.
Yeah.
Everything else will still be there tomorrow to be fixed. That's okay. But
Yeah.
just start working on the very smallest thing, and it could be like one step in the right direction, one meeting you don't say yes to, one commitment you don't
Yeah.
put on yourself, one time you don't beat yourself up because you say no to somebody.
Yeah.
Those very small steps all start to compound effect over time. So
Yeah.
you see this massive exponential curve over the course of a year.
Yeah, no, that's great. I use a tool in my diary, which might help people listening. And you've just explained why stacking is actually beneficial. Where, for example, after this podcast, I'm going straight into another one, and
Mhm.
just so I keep all that stacked. But then also for the rest of the week, the most important things, my repetitive work tasks, so in my diary, as are all of my lunches, all of my really important personal, exercise, all personal appointments, and then everything else is then, in between. But if you've got your skeleton in there and you try and stack your tasks, like I'm really good very early in the morning, very early. Like I get up at sometimes earlier than 5 o'clock. But my most creative and, focused work where I really need to sit down for a good 5 hours in a row to get a deeper work task done, I'll do that then, or I'll stack a bunch of podcasts. So, by the sounds of it, I'm doing the right thing.
But you're probably far more organized than I am, to be honest, by the sounds of it.
Well, it's just great. I mean, if we organize our diaries in the way that we're in charge, we can design our lives, then all the chaos can sort of fit around that. But at least the core of our mental health, our physical health, and our important work tasks are stacked. You're really going to be ahead of the game.
Yeah, I love that idea. We teach something very similar. It's like plan your day and plan your day around your energy, not your time.
Yeah.
So tackling the hard tasks when you're clear and agile, leaving the administrative tasks or the basic tasks till you've got a little bit less energy.
Yeah.
When you're more creative, when you're less creative, and putting in deep work windows, exactly the same. So we allocate two 90-minute or three 60-minute deep work tasks before you even turn your emails on. Get that
Yeah.
important thing done so it's done for the week.
Yeah. Love that. Oh, I've got one more question for you.
Shoot.
And it's brief because I know we have to go soon. But if someone listening is feeling overwhelmed right now, whether by work or health challenges or just life, what's one piece of operational friction they should eliminate today to create some energy and clarity?
Um, it's interesting, when you feel out of control, everything feels out of control.
Mm.
And so the first piece of friction that we talk about, that you can control, is asking for or giving help. We use a mnemonic called HEART, and the H of heart stands for help. And what that means is if you're feeling really overloaded, go find somebody to talk to, because a problem shared is a problem halved. You get a second perspective, you get a sounding board. And often when you're in the middle of it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
Um, we all find this. It was very easy to coach somebody on their problems, but it's very difficult to deal with your own.
Yeah.
So asking for some help.
Yeah.
The other beautiful piece of help that we discovered kind of later was giving help is a great way to get clarity. And I don't know if my wife is obsessed with Hallmark movies.
Hmm.
And one of the beautiful things that happens in nearly every Hallmark movie is there's a Christmas fair and everybody goes along to help. The whole village clubs around and gives, and then normally a village that's struggling because something's going to close down, or you've seen a Hallmark movie. Um,
Yeah.
but there's this beautiful neurochemical pattern that happens when you're giving help to people. So when you're volunteering at something, when you're being charitable, when you're um, helping somebody else walk the dog, when you're helping a child learn, um, it creates this incredible oxytocin response, which is the sort of the connecting and loving chemical. It also creates a beautiful dopamine and serotonin response, which are the sort of the happy chemicals in the brain. And so when you're feeling kind of really overwhelmed, who could I help? What could I do to support somebody else? And it just makes my problems feel a little bit less. And it gives you a feeling of control that you're doing something that will help people. There are lots of others that we could talk about, but I kind of really like that one because it feels nice as well.
Yeah, and it's good that we're talking about it because usually when we're stressed, we can become very self-focused from being stressed out, and to remember to have something in place. Maybe it's somewhere where you volunteer, or you go and help people, maybe in like-minded industries where you're there to support younger people, where it's sort of also locked in the diary, and it can
Yeah,
just remind you life's okay, even when you go through big challenges at work or in your life, that you get some perspective, but you're also helping.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's so true. I had a few meetings yesterday in New Zealand, and the job market in New Zealand is very tough right now. And so there's lots of people who are out of work who are looking for jobs, and
Yeah.
people asking for advice. And my immediate response was, well, who can you connect with other people who are networking, and try and introduce people so they can make new connections, make new
Yeah.
relationships, and possibly find work. And that again, it's just tuning the energetic tuning fork, right? So you're focusing your electromagnetic energy in a positive way,
Yeah.
but that has a resonant effect into the world around you. And 9 times out of 10, when you start helping people, help comes to you.
Absolutely. I love that. Now let's end on that because that's beautiful. Jimmy, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you today and to have you on the podcast and sharing your expertise. Thank you for what you do in the world.
Thanks, Amanda. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad it was useful.
I will share all of your links of your podcast and your books and your website in the show notes. And yeah, thank you again, Jimmy.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us on the Bend Like Bamboo Resilience podcast. I hope today's conversation inspired you. And if this resonated with you, please rate, follow, and share it with someone who needs to hear this episode. If you would like to go deeper with me, whether you're leading through burnout, navigating health challenges, or rebuilding after setbacks, I'd be honored to support you. Head to benlikebamboo.com to explore our programs, check out my new book, or book a free discovery chat. Trust your ability to bend and flow with life. I'll catch you at the next episode.